Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. And today I'm speaking to Ben Christo, longtime guitarist for goth rock icons the Sisters of Mercy. The band are returning to North America for their 24-date Fall 24 tour, which falls hot on the heels of their well-received 2023 U.S. tour, which is the first time they played the States in over 14 years. On today's podcast, I speak to Christo to discuss their upcoming tour, what material fans can expect to hear, why the band's fan base remains so rabid, how they have cultivated a legacy from such a small discography, if there's any remote chance that they will finally release a new album, working with the group's new guitarist Kai, how the band's songwriting process works, what it's like working with Eldritch, and much more. So get dressed in black, turn off the lights, and enjoy. I'll go ahead and get things started. What I was first curious about, last time you guys hit America last year for like the first tour in probably over 14 years. What made you decide to come back so soon? What was the impetus for that?
Or not so soon? Oh, you mean so soon this time?
Yes.
Right. Well, I think like as a bit of a side quest here is that it had been asked of me last year, why has it been so long since you've been here? And part of it is because in order to play America for an English band, there's a lot of things that have to fall into place at the right time. Because of course you've got not only everything to do with visas, but the expense of the flights and the distances between the shows are vast. So in order for it to all be economically viable, it takes a lot of things to kind of fall into place. Whereas touring Europe is a lot more economically viable on the sense of you playing 5 or 6 cities or 3 or 4 cities in each country, and then the next country is just over there.
Yeah.
And the distances you're driving are usually something between 2 hours to 6 hours or so. In some extremes more. But in America, you're looking at huge overnight drives every time.
Yeah.
And some of the drives are drive halfway, stop for a day off, and then drive another day. So why did we come back so quickly this time? Well, I just think because it was so good. We had such a good time, and we really felt like there was a lot of excitement surrounding the tour from the fans and from ourselves as well. That it just seemed to be that because it went so well for us and for the fans. I feel that the interest was there, and it's 18 months later, I think, which I think is a 18-ish months later, which I think is a realistic touring cycle time frame.
Yeah.
It just feels like sooner because it was so long previously that we came over, I think.
Well, I was at the Austin show last year, which was fantastic. And of course, it's been pretty well regarded that the last tour was really well received by fans and you had a very good reception. And, I think what's interesting too is that you look in the audience and you've got all different generations that are at this show. What do you think speaks to the Sisters' like enduring appeal and ability to keep being, viable and still regarded so well?
Well, one of the main things I think that has meant that the Sisters' work has stood the test of time is firstly good tunes, just good, memorable tunes that were written by the band in the 80s and early 90s. Those recorded works that newer fans have heard for the first time in recent years. Such is the nature of the internet that someone can discover your band today, and even if you released an album 25 years ago or 35 years ago, to them it's fresh. Because the original back catalogue, those melodies are so strong and so well captured, I think it captures people's imagination regardless of whether they were there the first time round or they're just discovering it now. At the same time, I think because Eldritch wrote such brilliantly oblique lyrics, I think people can find their own story in those lyrics regardless of whether or not they were listening in 1987 or if they're listening now. He's got a really good knack of writing lyrics that are, on the one hand, extremely vivid and evocative. The imagery that he talks about is very strong, whilst retaining an oblique quality, which means that you can apply it to yourself, whoever you are, and whenever you are. And then I think the third thing is something about the aesthetic, sonically and visually of the band across the years appeals to people who have been marginalized in some way. Now, I think that most people that I ever speak to about the band, like yourself, like other musicians who like the band, fans, at some point have felt like an outsider. And the music of the Sisters of Mercy has spoken to them in some way that has empowered them and made them feel as if there was something out there that understood them, something out there that got them, and made them feel part of a movement that gave them a sense of place. So when people come to our shows now, whether they be 18-year-olds or 58-year-olds or older, I feel like most people have at some point just experienced some sense of being marginalized, of being outside. And this show is a safe space for them to connect with like-minded fans and like-minded folk who have been marginalized over the years.
And I think there's also, so many bands these days, they share their whole life over the internet. There's just there's not much mystique to a lot of modern bands because they really want to connect with their fans and they're so desperate to get like social media. And so I think the Sisters really, even back in the 80s, they certainly had a mystique, but I think that still endures, that there's just not a real, Andrew doesn't have a lot of access, to fans. He kind of keeps it in the, close to the vest.
It's a rare thing. And it was pointed out by Justin Hawkins of The Darkness, actually. He does this really great YouTube thing.
Yes, I love this show.
And he did one about Lucretia, My Reflection video. And in it, he pointed out something that I'd never really noticed before, that in a lot of those promotional clips, Andrew is consistently moving away from the camera, moving behind things, being slightly obscured. Whereas most artists in the 80s, 90s, and even today are like, hey, it's me, look at me, I'm awesome. Whereas it's all very much just like moving away and hiding and keeping that level of mystique, even back then, to something that endures now in the stage show, whereby largely in the set, he's a silhouette, but then he chooses when to step into these shafts of light and reveal a contour or a bit of a hand or whatever it is to keep that mystique going. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. I think it's very hard for artists, emerging artists now, certainly the band that I'm in, my own band, we're finding that we're having to just be really engaging with our audience. And I like it. That's in my personality. I like chatting to people. I like vibing with people and I like making contacts with people. And however, I appreciate that Andrew's brand is very different from what my band's brand is. And his brand is one more about showing less and being more oblique. And in some ways, like some of the artists that I grew up admiring who now have Instagram pages, I'm almost like, I kind of wish I hadn't followed them because the mystique has sort of fallen away a bit of like, oh my God, I idolized you. And now you're putting a quite cringe post on.
Yes.
I'm sure you probably experienced something similar.
Oh yeah. Yeah. There's certain artists that I'm like, oh boy, I wish I didn't know that. Can't put the genie back in the bottle,
Yeah. I guess it's because ultimately what we have to remember is that what we admire is someone's work, not actually them necessarily. Yes. And creating that separation can be quite important. Or as we're finding now, someone who works in marketing said to me something really interesting, which she said, people are less interested now about what the product is. They're more interested about who the people are behind the product. And she said that was actually true for not just bands and actors and entertainment, but for other products too, which I find quite fascinating. That she said the people who represent the product, even if that's a board game or the people whose message and their vibe behind, I don't know, a cleaning product. It's because you could buy any one of 10 cleaning products. Why am I going to buy your one? Well, because I like the people behind it. I like the personality behind it.
And, you have a new guitarist now, Kai. And I was curious, how has it been integrating him into the band and what has it been like that so far? And also, how do you decide how to divide the guitar parts? Like for which song do you say, how is that ultimately decided?
Well, to begin with, it was divided just, do what was done before, because that's the simplest thing to do. Because the circumstances of Kai coming into the band were that very quickly Kai had to learn the material. So there wasn't really much discussion, or other than here's what was being done previously. Though we did modify some things as well. But I'm certainly not precious about what parts I do or don't do. I just want it to sound the best it possibly can. And so there has been very specific instance of a song called Detonation Boulevard, where I used to play the entire guitar solo. But Kai is such a great lead player. Said, well, let's split it between us. Let's do half and half. Why not? It makes for a good show. You're a great player. Let's do it half and half. And so things like that, absolutely, really, really kind of up for grabs. And also, it plays into people's skill sets. There's a tremolo picking part on Marianne. I don't know if you know what tremolo picking is, but you play up and down strokes really quickly. I'm rubbish at that. Kai's really good at that. Kai, you do it. So there's definitely, like, Kai's a shredder. Kai is like real technical guitar player. I'm more of a kind of straight ahead 3 notes kind of person. So again, it's, even though there isn't a lot of technical stuff in the sisters' work, there are bits that do require that sort of accuracy. And so, yeah, it's just playing to strengths, really. Also, vocally, Kai has brought so much to the to the palette of what we're doing. Kai has an extremely wide range of being able to sing very low and in this very powerful falsetto as well, which brings some of those classic female parts that we know from the more kind of grand records of maybe Floodland and Vision Thing, where you've got those very strong female parts. Kai's able to do those with great pitch accuracy and gusto. And so we've done these great vocal arrangements between us where we're able to cover a lot of octaves at the same time, whereas previous incarnations of the band, we used to kind of all sing pretty much the same thing.
Same register.
Yeah.
And I tried finding this information online, but I couldn't really find anything. But I know, for a while now, you haven't toured with the bassist, but you listen to the early, or all their sister albums, the bass is a really kind of prominent aspect of the songwriting and the production. Was that just a choice that Andrew decided a long time ago? He just didn't care for having a bass live. And if so, is it a challenge to kind of fill in for that sound when you're playing live to kind of, to compensate for that?
That's a really interesting point. And I don't actually know the decision, when that decision was made, because in the early 90s, I understand that in the Vision Thing era, they were touring with a bass player, with a live bass player. I'm not sure when or why that decision came up to let's have the bass on Dr. Avalanche. I think it works pretty well for some of the for the aesthetic, because you do have a very industrial side to the Sisters of Mercy. Mm-hmm. This very regimented rhythm section. What makes Dr. Avalanche better than a drummer, certainly for our band, is that Dr. Avalanche can do more than what a drummer could ever do. Because not only have we got the drum set, but we've also got all sorts of different percussion going on as well, with offbeats and accents and things. So if you also combine with that having extremely regimented bass line, which is actually comprised of a number of different basses playing at the same time. So you've got more of a register than you would have with just one bass guitar. Mm-hmm. It means that on top of that, we've got a lot more fluidity and a lot more freedom with the guitar parts and with the vocals to be a bit more expressive and a bit more rock and roll, a bit more foot on the monitor, just play a note, whatever, where, rather than being like, so I think it does lend something. I do understand how a lot of, there are a number of opinions that feel that the band should have a live bass. And we do actually play live bass on a couple of songs. Maybe going forward, we could experiment with using the live bass more. But I think the general aesthetic of it really holding down that extremely machine-like rhythm section is quite an important part of the band's sound.
And what I thought was great about last year's set was it was a perfect mix. You had all the hits, you had some deep cuts, you had some new material. Will the set list be pretty similar to last year's, or is it going to be quite a bit different? Or is there any surprises that fans might expect, as far as some deep cuts, things like that?
Well, we'll see. I think in terms of ratio, the ratio would be the same. We're finding that it works well. The ratio that we had of, as you say, hits, deep cuts, new songs, the ratio would be similar as we did last time. What those songs will be could be different. And also the arrangements can be slightly different as well, largely due to how we've approached the songs differently with Kai.
And I think pretty much everybody that I knew that saw the show or what I read online was, there's a very strong reaction to the new material, that it was really, felt like the sisters. It didn't feel like anything trendy or trying to, it just felt like classic sister stuff. And I was curious, when y'all are writing new material, I know that Andrew, of course, is the sole original member. He's like the mastermind behind everything. Does it start with him with like a vocal melody? Does it start off with you coming up with a riff, or what's the general songwriting process like when you work on new songs?
Different for every song. I think there are various different processes. One process would be that we would have sat in a room together, jammed, and Andrew would say something like, look, set the drum machine to 180 BPM and we'll just riff and see what happens. And some of songs came from those sorts of sessions. Other songs came from sessions whereby I had a half-formed idea that I brought to the table and then worked on it with the band, and then it was changed and developed and then fully fledged into a song. Other ideas were, for example, there was a song called Eyes of Caligula, where I believe Andrew had the title and some of the lyric for many, many years, but we'd never actually put music to it. And he sang what he felt the chord progression should be. And then I sort of went, okay, well, this, and we sort of figured it out. And then I came up with a clean lick to go on top of it. And then it sort of built from there. So either completely from scratch, with it being, let's do something that's this fast, or let's do something with this feel, or it being one of the band members, including Andrew, would come with the at the beginning of an idea, and we would develop it together, which was quite nerve-wracking for me, because I'd bring these ideas forward and I really think this is good, and I really hope he likes it, because I think it could be a great song. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. And the key thing was just to try and create as much as possible and not be precious that if he goes, I don't really like it, then goodbye. That's that guy next. And to be able to go, doesn't matter that I spent 7 hours on that, we'll carry the next one. But that being, that's always a really good barometer. If someone else whose musical opinion you trust, who hasn't any emotional investment in what you've created, because you've gone, but I spent ages on this, but they're just hearing it on face value of like, it's not really for us, or wow, that's great. And those moments where he would go, wow, that's great, would mean so much because they were sparse. And so when he did say that, you knew that you'd hit on something good. And that was very exciting for me, because having been in the band for 18 years and never really had any ideas get through until 2019, it really felt like I'd developed as a writer to the point where my ideas were good enough to make it into the band.
And are there any songs that you all have recorded recently that are not recorded, of course, but songs that you worked on recently that might make it into the set, or is?
Yeah, I mean, we've been playing with some ideas, and there's one particular that I really hope that does make it in. But we'll see. It all depends on whether or not it feels right to bring it in to this tour.
And back in 2016, or prior to that, Andrew had mentioned that if Trump won the election, that he might have to make a new album. And of course, everybody got excited because we were depressed about everything else. So we were like, at least this would be something. And didn't happen. And now that we are, God forbid, that it might happen again. And I'm hoping, given recent announcements that we're going towards a better path. But if that were to happen, do you think he might fulfill what he mentioned, or do you think that was just an offhanded comment that was just meant to be funny?
I think if we go back to the actual quote, the wording of it has been slightly, has mutated slightly over time to, if he gets in power, we make a new album. Whereas I believe the original was something like, if he were to do it, we might consider the possibility of maybe doing, there's so many like caveats to it. But what I will say is I think whatever happened in the political climate and in the essentially in modern affairs during 2019 to 2023 clearly sparked a lot of inspiration in Andrew, because he wrote a lot because of these new songs. There's 15 to 20 new songs, and they've got some really great lyrics. really great lyrics. And he started doing this thing where he purposefully was using grammar incorrectly, which was an odd flavor that if you really do a deep dive on the lyrics of some of the new songs like Caligula and On the Beach, you can see that he's like perversely using this grammatical anomalies and on purpose, and it becomes sort of a new flavor of his style at this point in time.
And I think, fans are always, I think most of us have kind of resigned to the fact that we're probably never going to get a new album. It's just this thing that deep inside us, we're like, well, maybe one day. It's kind of just this optimistic streak. But even if there wasn't like a new studio album, has the band ever considered putting out a live album so that these new songs can get, just a presentation that's not just something that was uploaded on YouTube, that can be a proper showcase for the new material?
Well, I know that we've recorded a lot of the shows from the desk, so it could be possible. That said, an interesting thing that a younger fan said to me a year or so ago, he's, I love the new songs. I listen to them on my way to college. And I said, well, how? And he goes, because I make a YouTube playlist, and the fidelity of the recordings that people do in shows now, very different from what they were doing in 2012, where it's just like, now it sounds good. It's not perfect, but you can hear the song, you can hear the tunes, you can hear the riffs. And it's certainly good enough and powerful enough for him to listen to on his way to school, and enjoy it and learn the words. And you look around in the shows now, and you do see people knowing the words to these newer songs. Like, but how? Because the fidelity of the live recordings is enough that it's enjoyable for a fan to listen to. I'm not saying that necessarily is a fitting replacement for actually a proper official live record, but it does show that people can learn the songs without actually us releasing anything, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, because I think one thing about, of course, we all know one reason that we never got an album a long time ago was just because he was stuck in a miserable record contract, and he just was kind of done with the whole thing. And I think, some fans think, well, now you've got the freedom due to the internet to be able to put music out on your own website if you wanted to, maybe to update your website at some point from when it was originally created. But he seems like he's just very comfortable kind of where the band's at, doing stuff when he wants to and not. Is that the sense that you get too, that he's basically happy with the way things are and that he doesn't really feel the need to change it?
He's just sort of constructed of opposites. There are some things that he's extremely enthused and activated about, and there are some things that he's not. And it's sometimes difficult to know which things he will be activated about and which he won't. I guess if you were in his position, it's like we go out, we do these shows, we get to write songs and play them to an audience in a way that we like, presented in a way that we like. Whereas the process, I think, of recording might take some of the joy out of it, perhaps, for him. The difference is that he's already done what most artists spend most of their career trying to do: create not just one but 3 hit records, be immortalized, get his artwork out there, get his art out there, and be recognized critically and commercially as a success in alternative music. No, not like selling out and going cheesy. It's always been cool. It's always been awesome. And therefore, what really would he benefit from of doing another recording other than, it might be interesting to hear what these songs sound like on tape? I don't know. It's a difficult one for me to empathize, because I've never had my own work released anywhere near that level of that magnitude of acclaim. So it's still an aspiration for me. Whereas I guess if you've done it 3 times, you're like, oh yeah, whatever.
Well, also, I think one thing that makes him so interesting, the band so interesting, is that, what a lot of people didn't get at first, I think it took him a while to understand, he's got a really great, dry sense of humor. I think that and you can find that in the lyrics too, if you look for it. Is there anything else about his personality that fans might be surprised by, that they wouldn't expect something for him to be into or excited about, or some hobby, or just anything that people would be like, what? Just would do like a double take when they heard about it?
Well, he's extremely into sci-fi and very particular about sci-fi. So from my understanding is that he was into Jerry Anderson and that stuff from a young.
Oh yeah, the puppet stuff,
and or just any sci-fi stuff, I guess, when he was growing up. And he's still very passionate about it. He's got an amazing film collection. He's got like every movie ever. So whether that be something from 1918 or it be something from that came out, very, very recently, he's got it, he's seen it, he's got an opinion on it. So yeah, he's an aficionado, I think, when it comes to film. And I don't know if that's something that people would recognize about him, but yeah, all sorts of sci-fi as well, not one particular sort, but like, I think he's got an interest in every subgenre of the genre and has an opinion of something in most of those subgenres.
Cool. And something that I wanted to mention as well. I mean, you have a busy career outside the Sisters, as you mentioned. You have your band, Diamond Black, and you've done a bunch of session work. Is there anything that you're working on currently outside the Sisters that'll be coming out soon, or any projects that you're thinking about starting or to kind of in the process of becoming something?
Yeah, so there's a few things going on. My band Diamond Black are going to release an EP soon. A 4-track EP with a remix by one of our favorite bands as well, which is exciting. And so we're just sort of figuring out the best way of getting that out, and then an album next year. I just did a few shows with Ricky Warwick, who's the singer of a band called The Almighty. He also sang for Thin Lizzy and Black Star Riders. And I play guitar and sing backing vocals for him. I've made some contributions to his new album, which is very exciting for me because I grew up listening to his work. And we've also done a video for the new album, which has an amazing guest feature on it. Well, like one of my most incredible heroes is on the track as well. So I'm very excited for that to come out. And I've just been putting some collating some work today for a video editor of a cover version that I've done of one of my favorite songs with some other musicians in the rock and metal industry that I really, really admire. And we've come together because we're all a fan of this band that we're covering and done this really cool version. And that's going to come out in the next few months. And I'm very excited about that. So yeah, plenty of things going on.
But keeping it close to the vest. Don't want to say who.
Of course.
Okay. I don't blame you. Well, I appreciate you talking to me today. I'm looking forward to seeing you all again when you return to Austin. I'm just going to throw this as a suggestion. I'm not expecting it to be in the list, but if Colors ever was to make it to the list, I would probably faint because of my favorite songs. I know it's a B-side song that he probably doesn't even think about anymore, but that's just my humble request.
Well, I tell you what, Michael, I'm going to go and have a little listen to that now and just to see how that would translate if we were to do it. Because I know he's quite up for doing unexpected things, and you can see it by some of the covers that the band has done in the past. It's usually, it's always something very unexpected, whether that be Hot Chocolate or bloody, Rolling Stones or whatever. So who knows? He might go, oh yeah, we've never done that, so let's try that. No promises.
All right, I'll keep my fingers crossed. Well, thank you, Ben. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you for taking the time out to talk to me.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, and nice one, dude.
All right, thank you. Take care.
You too, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks to Ben Christo for taking time out for this interview. You can keep track of the tour dates and all things Sisters of Mercy at their official website, thesistersofmercy.com. And I thought it'd be fun to close out with Colors, the song that was a bonus track off Floodland. And it was originally a song that was billed as a sisterhood, which was with Andrew's little effort with Alan Baker from Suicide and some others. So listen to that. See what you think. Get ready for the shows. And until next time, stay safe and stay sane.